Hello, this is Nicole Spohr for Spellbinders. Today I'm sharing a Build a Terrarium card with inked die cuts layered for depth and dimension. I'm using the following dies to create my interactive card today. The Die Delights Build a Terrarium etched dies, the Shapeabilities Tropics Wild and Free etched dies, the Shapeabilities Simply Said Phrase 2 dies, and the Nestabilities Fancy Edged Rectangles etched dies. I love mixing and matching different dies from all different collections to create my cards. I have die cut off camera many of the dies for my project today, starting with the Shapeabilities Fancy Rectangles. I die cut the largest rectangle from some dark gray cardstock, and I'm using the second largest, and instead of die cutting this shape, I'm instead going to use this with the embossing mats for the Spellbinders Platinum machine, and I'm going to emboss that rectangle shape into my background. It instantly adds a fantastic embossed frame without the extra layer, but definitely adds lots of fantastic detail. I'm actually going to go ahead and die cut and emboss two of these to fill the front of my card. And you'll see that when we get to the end of the video and are putting the entire thing together. Now for the components of the Build a Terrarium die collection. On the blue aqua background, I inked this up with white pigment ink. This is going to give it a much lighter look and really help with that glass kind of feel that I want for this piece. So I've really inked up especially the top of that domed edge with white pigment ink. For the pebbles or sand that'll go in the bottom of the terrarium, I am inking this up with Gathered Twigs Distress ink, trying to use a light hand so that ink really sticks to the embossed area of this design. Something to note is the images in this, the little more grass looking domed image, one of the cacti, and the pebbles on the bottom, you want to run those through after you've die cut them to emboss them with your embossing sandwich for your Spellbinders machine so that they get that great embossed detail. Now I'm inking up the cacti images with some MOWED Lawn Distress ink. I've die cut all of these from two different colors of green cardstock, a light and a dark, for added interest. As I'm working on inking these up, I'm laying them out, kind of just making sure that everything looks good, that I like how it's all coming together. The last two pieces for the terrarium are the glass domed top, which I die cut from a piece of acetate, and then the bottom piece I die cut from some metallic ivory cardstock to go on the bottom. I wanted it to definitely contrast with the dark gray of the background. Before we put this together, we want to add some detail to the cactus with a white pen. This is really just going to dress up the images a little bit more. I'm taking my pen and adding little dots all over. All these little things you can do to really add interest to your die cuts. In addition to the terrarium pieces, I wanted to layer some additional greenery, almost like this is a embellishment, or not really embellishment, but decoration, I guess, in your house. Like there's greenery around it, and then you've got this beautiful terrarium. So for my greenery, I die cut 3 pieces from the Tropics die collection, and again from 2 colors of cardstock, inked the edges with white pigment ink and MOWED Lawn Distress ink. I want to put my terrarium together for the most part, as much as I can here, and then I'm going to adhere this with some foam adhesive to my card. Off camera, I did stamp and emboss some sentiments from a Honeybee Stamps Prickly Sentiments stamp set. I love that this works really nice with especially like the cacti images from the terrarium with a sentiment that says, "You're stuck with me." The rest of the greeting will be die cut using the phrase 2 dies, and we're going to use hello from that, so it reads, "Hello, you're stuck with me," which I think is really fun. I embossed this with some gold, antique gold embossing powder on that dark gray cardstock to really blend in with the rest of the design and not stand out so much. I really wanted everything to flow very nicely on this. I'm adding those foam adhesive pieces now to the back of my terrarium. And just trying to build this. I will be adding the clear dome top last. That is going to be a little tricky to adhere, I found. I tried to hide my adhesive as much as possible simply because it's clear and there's not a great area really to add my adhesive. Sometimes it's easier to hide adhesive than others. So I'm just going to use a little glossy accents and go around the edge to hold and use my glossy accents sparingly to hold that down. Now behind the terrarium, before I remove the backing paper, I want to go ahead and glue my greenery down. And I've got 3 pieces of greenery. Again, these are the great dies that you can die cut and emboss. And any of those embossed areas is really going to hold the ink really well. That's giving it the two-tone kind of look. And I'm using my terrarium as a guide to know where to put my greenery. And I think it makes the terrarium really pop on this background. I've glued these pieces down in place and then I'm putting something heavy like some acrylic blocks on top to hold those down. And then I took the backing paper off the foam adhesive squares and glued my terrarium. Now I need to figure out how to add the glass dome over the top before I add my die cut greeting. I'm going to put a little glossy accents. I started with just down at the bottom. I'm going to add a little bit just down at the bottom where I think that the die cut greeting will overlap, so it will kind of hide my adhesive, and then glue that down in place. The Hello Phrase 2 die cut was die cut from a very light green metallic cardstock adhered to fun foam with stick-it adhesive, which is one of my favorite things to do. However, I want to note that at this point, I have already popped up the terrarium with foam adhesive. So if I lay that hello greeting over that, it's going to not lay flat, if that makes sense. The bottom edge of the hello greeting is going to need more foam adhesive than what I've added. So I simply took foam adhesive squares and cut them into teeny tiny strips and only applied those to the bottom half back of my hello so that the top is going to lay flat to the terrarium that's popped up, and then the bottom half of the hello almost has 2 layers of foam adhesive on that. Now to add interest to that background, the fancy edged rectangles are a little bit smaller than a standard A2 sized card. So I'm going to do something a little different, and I trimmed off part of the top of this, and then I have another rectangle that I'm going to layer on the bottom, piecing together my background, making something just a little bit more interesting. So I want to go ahead and adhere these. I'll trim off the excess from this. And then I want to add some additional greenery to the bottom of my card with a couple more of the Tropics die cuts that I've inked. And then I'm going to add those Nouveau Crystal Drops in Simply White and Morning Dew. You can see those at the top of the card. I want to finish those down at the bottom so it's a beautiful seamless design. If you have any questions about this card, please leave them in the comments below and be sure to subscribe to the Spellbinders YouTube channel for more instructional videos. Thanks for joining me today for this die cut Build a Terrarium card. We'll see you next time.